Hi, friends. Welcome to Taking Back Happy. I'm your host, Gina Granville, God's girl, retired homeschool mom of 4, empty nester, Gigi, essential oil and exercise enthusiast, Christian life coach, and someone who's taken back her own happy. I know many of you feel exactly like me in these midlife years, a sort of loss of direction, but way too young and vibrant to sit on the porch and just watch life go by. What if you could reimagine your life, finding deep joy, renewed passion, and purpose, and plenty of adventure in these midlife years? If you're ready to rediscover God's joy and purpose in this season of life, throw on those walking shoes, pop in those earbuds, and join me right here as we take back happy together. All right, I am so thrilled to be here today with one of my friends. Every time I have a guest on here, it's someone I really love and I really admire. And Donna is another one of those people. So Donna Craig and I are kind of sort of in-laws in a way. Her daughter's married to my son. But she is a 56-year-old mother who looks forward to and enjoys her empty nest. She tutors conversational English to Korean women and kids. She lives in a socially busy neighborhood and is very active in her church. She is obsessive. She has obsessive enjoyment of grandparenthood. And that really came as a surprise to her. So she's a maker, a plant enthusiast, and a reader who runs a book club with her sister. She travels and languages are her jam. And this blew my mind. She said, I study 3 languages daily and travel as often as possible. I was like, 3 languages? Anyway, which really isn't enough to satisfy her wanderlust. So hello, Donna. I'm so excited you're here today. Joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited that you thought I was worthy.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So I'll tell you how this all came about. So when I talk to people a lot about empty nesting, or, you're an empty nester, and so many people are so sad about it and so brokenhearted. And I was one of those people that was just totally brokenhearted. I didn't know what I was going to do and what the next stage was going to look like. But I do remember talking to you, and you were like, I really wasn't sad about being an empty nester. So tell us a little bit more about that, where that was coming from.
Okay, well, it was a couple of things. So to start out, I just want to say, my mom set the example. She always looked forward to an empty nest. She had been through a hard divorce and all, and she was by herself. And so it wasn't because she wanted to spend more time with my dad or anything like that. She just looked forward to her freedom, and putting it in that reference frame made sense to me because the thing that attracted me really to Christianity and to my lifestyle is always freedom. Jesus offered us freedom, and when you know me, you'll be truly free and all that. And I'm being truly free is super attractive to me. So I stayed home and raised my 3 kids, and I really threw myself into it. I did all the things. I made all of their costumes. I made all of the set props and everything for their birthday parties, and I did them in my home and had banging birthday parties for them and everything. And so I really enjoyed motherhood, but as they got older, my goal was that they would be independent. And so when my children left home, that meant I had achieved my goal. So for me, the empty nest was achievement of a goal. And it was very positive. The other thing was now I'm free to run my household for me and my husband. And because of Jerry's personality, really, for me, because he's just whatever, if you're running it, I'm happy, so that was kind of what I look forward to. And the other thing I would add to that is that as my children got older, I began to build to re-find myself and to build my own existence within that as a legit other person besides my motherhood. So I did not feel like motherhood was my only goal. And then the third thing I would add to that is, as a Christian, my worldview was to serve God. And when I read the scriptures, I don't see like, please don't take this wrong, but I don't see like being a mom as the way really that Jesus had people serving him. You know, the women in his world were serving him by studying under him and by living out that faith in very similar ways to the ways the men were. And so for me, like I had a phase of my life where God was holding me responsible for raising my children, but ultimately service to him was outside of the home. So I look
That,
forward to
I
being
love
free to do
that.
that.
I love the looking at it as a goal. Like the goal was to raise them and, help them be independent and like looking at like, oh, this is a job well done, as opposed to, oh my gosh, this job is over. What am I going to do? I mean, that's a total different mind shift right there.
Right.
If you're looking at like, oh, I accomplished what I set out to
Yeah,
accomplish.
great satisfaction of
Yeah.
the goal. And that's what, like, when my last child backed out of my driveway and smiled and waved goodbye, I was like, fait accompli. I mean, like, I did it. And all of them left home at 18. And I felt they were ready. I had prepared them. They knew how to do all the work of maintaining a home. They knew how to work. So, like, when my kids turned 16, I was like, happy birthday, get a job. And by the way, we bought you a bang up derby car, type car, and, you should be licensed and you need to get a job and bye bye, so that was another thing was like I was weaned off of my children. Like I saw less and less of them at that point because they were working, they were involved in school, they were involved in their extracurriculars. And yeah, so
You guys determined to do that? Like, where you're like, okay, when they're 16, we need to make sure, or is it something that just happened as you were having kids and you're like, oh, okay, I think you need to get a job. And then after you did it with one, you started doing it with all of them.
I'm an obsessive reader, and uh John Roseblum was like he wrote Parenting by the Book. Uh,
Okay.
he was a big impact on me. And then I had two boys, which is a daunting, as you know, a daunting lifestyle. It's great. So I also read Bringing Up Boys by James Dobson, and I loved he has a moment in there where he talks about all the traits that are considered negative about boys, like stubbornness and aggressiveness. And he's like, so these are the bricks that you use to build a man, and you turn stubbornness into persistence, and you turn aggression into outgoing, I forget the word he used, but forwardness, like goal seeking,
Wow.
goal seeking and all that. And I took that very seriously, that brick by brick I was building a man out of these boy traits. And all my daughter was my first, and she had all the first child traits that you expect of like pleasing authorities and stuff like that. I'm not saying she was perfect all the time. There were like 9 months of like, holy crap, get her to a therapist and us too, because we didn't even know what to do with her. But that was it. Like most of
Only 9 months, though. That's not bad.
that's not bad. Exactly. So, yeah, my goal was to get them up and out. And I always say, like, when my friends asked me about it, I was like, well, I pushed them out of my body and I just kept on a pushing. And that was my job. I felt like I would fail my children if they were not ready to be adults at 18. Um, I was not, and I had never had a job. My parents thought all I needed was good grades, and we proved that wrong. And I really wanted my children to know that they were enough to run their own homes and pay for them as well. And so that was my goal. And I'm a very goal oriented, I'm a list checker type person. And my husband didn't always agree with me. We fought a little bit over like how assertive I should be with the children.
Yeah.
So discipline was from me.
Right.
I was the disciplined person in the household. And so, yeah, I don't know that we totally agreed early on, but I had children and I had to fight for them. And I feel very strongly that parents are their children's advocates. And I advocated strongly for my kids. I did send my kids to the public school. And in that, I was a constant advocate in the school. And I did not have a problem letting people know exactly how I felt about the situations. And I did go in and fight and advocate for my children in the public school. And yeah, so right or wrong, I don't know. I don't really have like a solid thought about how
Yeah.
schooling is the best, which schooling is the best, but that was the schooling we did. And
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
And your husband probably was seeing with each kid, like, oh, okay, well, that's working well. And then the next one, she might be onto something here.
Hello, because the whole thing is like when you have three kids, your house is like a zoo. So I am sure there was like, oh, it's working for this kid, or it just felt like it was all like one big conglomeration of trying to make it work. And he didn't necessarily agree that discipline needed to be quite as strict as I did. And he also so I had certain rules that like were very strict. Like, you will always say ma'am when you address me. If my children ever said no to me, my response was, what did you say? And they would say, no, ma'am. And I think that did right by them. I'm very pleased with the results of teaching respect to children. But and he didn't always agree with me on discipline and on grounding for whatever. And um so we did actually duke it out like on an ongoing basis. And it was sometimes stressful to duke it out with your spouse, but I was bound and determined. And now, Bridget will say things to me like, Daddy was always so easy to talk to. And I'm like, that's awesome, sweetheart.
Well, I think that's pretty common too for parents, to be one to feel more this way when
You too.
to try to figure it out. Like, okay, so I mean,
Yeah.
you do have to duke it out, and
Yeah.
you have to okay.
Negotiation is no joke. Yeah. Negotiation is no joke. And it was a constant negotiation. But in the end, I think they were mostly taught by me and embraced by their father. And they're very pleased with having had that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. You said that another thing that helped you not to like freak out when they moved out or freak out when they grew up is you were finding yourself in this process. Tell me a little bit about that. And did you do that when they were little? Did you do that when they were older?
So that's interesting question. So I did not do that when my first two were little. It first began when my third, who is 4 years behind my second, was almost ready to wean. The youth leader left in our church, and the pastor came to us and said, I keep praying and praying, and the Lord keeps giving me y'all's names. And I'm like, really? Because I've been praying and praying, and God keeps telling me to tell you, I'll do it. So I heard it in youth ministry when Henry was almost ready to wean. And no joke, I did like a lock-in where I was lying on the gym floor nursing Henry. But because he was still nursing to bed at the time, he had like first thing in the morning and last thing at night left nursing. And so and he was a year old at the time. And so I started youth ministry at that time, and we did it kind of together, but Jerry was at work all day and I was home. So I wrote all the lessons and wrote and planned all the lessons because like I love writing, and I love the scriptures and I immerse myself in the scriptures. And so I felt like the Holy Spirit would give me a topic and a slant and how to make it relevant to to the youth. And so I would write these lessons and, Jerry would do things like let me tape braids to his head so he could be Samson or whatever. And
That's awesome.
and that's what we did. And we taught youth we in different capacities, sometimes as youth ministers, sometimes small group leaders, whatever, for 12 years. And so that was my first start. And I loved it because the pastors were happy to not have to pay for a curriculum because I was like, I'd love to write it. So we actually did like camps and everything where I wrote the whole camp and all, and I got to use all of my creative energy on that. And that really fed me. And that fed me through until Bridget left home, the first child. And then we moved. Jerry retired from the military and we moved to LaGrange where we are now. And I needed to find something else to do. And I got involved with a group that was exchange students. And I was working for the exchange student organization, but the person over me, I just like our work styles didn't work. So after a while, I was just like, okay, at this point, my second child was in upper high school. And so I was like, and then my third child was in middle school,
Okay.
upper middle school, lower high school. And so I just like, I've always had like a fear of failure and I've turned down a lot of opportunities because of this stupid fear of failure, which I think a lot of people deal with. And so I just was like in prayer and I told God, like, hey, I didn't say hey to God. That's you. I told God, like, okay, the next opportunity you send my way, I will say yes to. So we have a very active neighborhood and we have like a block party twice a year where we block off the whole road and we all meet out in the street and do a potluck and have fun, enjoy.
That's just fun. I see that on TV, but I never see it in real life.
This is the first time, I shouldn't say the only time because I've been here 13 years, but the first time in my life, and it's the most amazing, brings the most amazing quality to your life. But um, a lady from Korea approached me and said, would you be interesting? She said, do you have a degree in history? And I'm like, yes. And she said, okay, would you be interested in tutoring Korean women? We have a Kia plant here. So there are a lot of women who come with their husbands and they have nothing to do because they're used to they're educated professionals and they're just like, I don't know what to do. But yet when I try to go out into the community, the colloquial language confuses me. And so she said, would you be interested in tutoring them in conversational English? And my instinct was, heck no, I don't know how to do that. And I started to say it, and my whole body just froze up. And the Holy Spirit was like, girl, you promised.
Remember that thing you told me?
I was like, yes, I'll do it. And then I went home and Googled the heck out of it and just got started. And I've changed a lot, my methods over the years and learned as I've gone. But I've been doing it almost 10 years now. And I absolutely love it. I've taken on kids and college students and all kinds of different people who have all kinds of different needs and situations. I currently Zoom at 8 a.m. to kids who are 9 p.m. in Korea. And
Wow.
I've really been built up by that. And so by the time my third one left home, I had a strong sense of identity through that. And so when he left, again, like as he aged, he was working and he was needing me less. He was cleaning his own room, washing his own bathroom down, doing his own laundry. He was needing me less and less because I had taught him that. And so success, when he left home, I smiled and waved goodbye and was like, see you at Christmas, love you. And in fact, he offered to stay in our house to save us money. And I told him, no, we'll pay for the dorm. I'm ready for you to leave. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we paid through the nose. Just dorms are more than tuition. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So Yeah, we paid for that to have him move out. Yeah, I was ready.
Yeah.
I
That's
knew
pretty
who I was. Yeah.
that's pretty cool because you're like you started it, so many years prior, and then you were like by that time you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
totally at peace with this. Like
Yeah. By that time I had a waiting list. Yeah. So, because I only work 3 days a week. Sorry.
I think that's why women do struggle with it so much though. It's that identity piece because that's how I was like, if I'm not so and so's wife or such and such's mom, who am I? If I'm not
Right.
a homeschool mom on top of
Right.
that, if I
But I totally get that because
yeah,
why did the mom thing, like I did it like full time and I was in it. Even when my kids were at school, I was in the home, making the home the place where they lived. You know what I mean? And the place for my kids. And so, um, yeah. Hmm.
yeah, it's just it's a tough transition if you
Yeah,
have
it is. It's a worthwhile,
purpose or if you don't know
yes,
like
it's so worthwhile. Yeah, it's so worthwhile to like full-time mom, and I would encourage anyone to do it. I'm not one that's like, I never felt like I needed a job to be a person while I was full-time mothering. It was just as my kids got older. And of course, then the youth thing presented itself as a church need, not as a personal need.
right.
Uh,
Yeah.
So, but that was my first time like looking outside of my home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did your own kids come up through that youth group? Like,
Bridget did.
yeah.
Kevin did some of the time, and then we moved here. And
Okay.
Henry did not. And I mean, that's kind of a regret for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You said too, like your kind of like big reason, your third big reason was that, being a Christian. And you had said this to me the other day too when we were talking, and you're like, I don't see that in scripture because also another thing I would have said is like, I'm called by God to be this mom, and tell me
Yeah.
a little bit more about that, like what you were discovering as you were digging in.
Right. What happened was I started in the church, like most people in a fundamental church. I don't know if I didn't mean that as most people do a fundamental church. How do I want to say that? Most people in the fundamental church, I came up like I was taught, like that was my calling to be a
Yeah.
mom and all. And I'm like, okay. But I've always been kind of like a very like independent thinker, even if I'm not financially independent all the time. But I'm an independent thinker. And so I was like, I'm a researcher, I'm a history major. I'm like, so if I'm going to say I'm a Christian, I'm going to know what I'm saying. And so I started reading my Bible through every year. And I just started, after a while, like I switched to different, people worry about the word translations or whatever, but I switched to different Bibles, the ones that
Yeah.
are respectable. And I've read all different Bibles and I've read every year I read through these, and some of them are in the usual order and some of them are in chronological order and all this. And I've read all these Bibles and I keep reading and reading, and I'm like, where does Jesus say, like, if you have kids, like, that's your calling? And
Yeah.
I never found it. Like it was always like you have your family, but he's like what you would leave your family to follow me, you know? And fortunately for me, he never asked me to do that, but um that was always what I saw. Like the women's roles were quite interesting in the New Testament. They were supporting him financially, which is very interesting. I'm like, I guess he wasn't as poor as we thought he was because all these rich women were following around supporting him. They were, studying under him. Like we got the whole Mary Martha thing. And
Yeah.
there's so the encouragement is, sit at my feet and disciple under me. And then when you start getting into the studies of Paul and his letters, you see there were women like delivering letters to other churches, and if you dig into that, you find out that like that was a really dangerous job. Like that was like high risk work. And they were traveling delivering these letters to an illegal church. And so I'm like, and then we have Priscilla and Aquila, where you're like, why are they saying Priscilla before Aquila? That's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
little
Just the
shocking. and it must be because she was the first one he thought of. But they were like support, helping him support himself and helping him build the church. And they traveled with him. They moved to be helping to build the church, and they did all this crazy, dangerous, risky stuff to build the early church. And I'm like, nowhere in there does it talk about Priscilla's children. It doesn't talk about the time she spent raising her children. I'm assuming these women had children. They were able, they had them, right? That was the way. There wasn't the pill. So I'm like, the thing that the Bible is telling me about these women is not, oh, it's so sweet they stayed home and raised their children because that was their calling. So while when I raised my children, I never felt like the Lord was telling me I was wasting my time or anything of the sort.
Right.
I was trying to raise them with the Holy Spirit in their lives. But at the same time, I always felt like God had additional duties that he would require of me as a Christian, that raising children is our biological imperative. That's what we do. And our calling is something else. And so I just keep seeking out where the Lord wants me to be. So
I never thought about that until we were talking about it. And I was like, it kind of makes things like make more sense then. Because if you poured everything into just, I'm a mom, I'm a mom, I'm a mom. And then, or, whatever, like I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm a working mom, I'm a homeschool mom, whatever. But then you get to the end and you're like, well, I just worked my way right out of that job, like, which we're supposed to do.
exactly.
It makes more sense. That's
home like when in your late 40s, early 50s, maybe, and then you're like, I just hit menopause and I got like, Lord willing, 30, 40 years ahead of me.
right.
Done with me. I just don't believe that. I don't accept that. And I don't believe that. And that's not what I read in the Bible. It's even during the time where you're raising children, the Lord is like, girl, that's not enough. Like, you're going to give it all up for me. And so, yeah, I always felt like I was just as worthy of a great calling as a man any day. And that the thing is, like, I felt like representing to my kids wasn't staying at home doing dishes. Right. It was serving the Lord and bringing them with me. And that's what I try to encourage parents, like, do it and take them with you. Like, there's nothing that will excite them more for the kingdom, to be like, take part of building the mission. Yeah. Like, kids can help in a soup kitchen. Kids can, we used to have something called, Together We Can, and it was an old coffee can, and I wrote Together We Can on it. And whenever the kids were willing to sacrifice something to help others, they would put the money they would have spent on it into the can. And then at Christmas time, we would count all the money in the Together We Can, and we would donate it. We would decide where to donate together, so the kids knew, like, it's not just the parents who do for the Lord, like, children can serve God, and that's the best thing I felt I could do as a mother was to represent. Yeah.
I love that. And it gives them a bigger picture than just themselves, what they want. Like, using that money, not using that money to buy them a toy, not using that money to go on vacation, using that money to help other people,
Yeah, I remember one year Bridget and I decided we didn't need Easter dresses. And so we put the money value in the can. And later we decided we could buy, and the kids all helped with these decisions. Like, we decided we would buy a smaller Christmas. We always buy a fresh cut Christmas tree. And so we decided to buy a smaller one to put the extra in the can and stuff like that. So the kids really love that. They love knowing that they have a place in the kingdom. Yeah.
Very cool. So if you just one last thing that I'm just kind of thinking about is, like, if you were going to encourage I don't like an empty nest mom or someone who's like getting ready, her kids are going to be graduating the next couple of
Mhm.
years. What encouragement would you give them today?
I would give them like when your kids leave, like throw your hands up in the air and yell hooray. Like I did it. I did it. This was my goal all of these years. 18, whatever age your child is, all of these years, this was your job.
Yeah.
And I mean, how many jobs do we really complete in life? You do the laundry every week and again and again. And
It's still there.
parenting, you don't quit parenting, but you quit being needed.
Right.
And what a success is that? And then your children will come home and they will be happy, like, oh, I want to be, even when Bridget goes to your house for Christmas, I know her heart remembers her childhood Christmas in my house. You know what I mean? Like, I have to share her with you, dang you,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like they have treasured memories in your home and the same as you do. And I remember when I was a young adult, I didn't want the adults talking down to me and holding me back. And I remember that. And I give the same grace to my children. I give that grace to my children that I wanted when I was young, where I respect them. When my kids were graduated from high school, I told them, you're an adult and I'm going to treat you like an adult. And if you're making a decision I don't approve of, I'm going to be like, well, you're an adult and guess who pays the consequences? Not mama anymore.
Right.
And so, you know, yeah, I just want to give them the grace and the respect that they earned. And in turn, they do the same to me. And I love them for that. And they love me. And now I'm Muzzy. I'm a grandmother, and that's been very exciting finally. But the empty nest lasted a while for me before I became a grandmother. It's not like you stop one and start the other. There's like
Right.
a long moment where I'm a mother of adults. What does that mean? And I think that's a learning curve. Your instinct is to tell them, no, you shouldn't do that. You're so wrong. What are you doing? That's a ridiculous decision. But you have to step back and be like, I'm going to give you the respect I wanted when I was a young adult. And so that was my role. It still is with Henry. He doesn't have kids.
Because like, would you like if my parents were telling me something when I was a young adult, I'd be like, whatever.
Exactly. Well, they need
You're
to stop
not gonna really listen to that. You're
they
just
need to accept they can't control me, and I mean, actually, that's true.
and you're kind of a little insecure. You're trying to figure it out anyway, and then you're like, the last thing you want is someone like momming you or like telling you what to do. Like when
Now,
you're
that said, if they're asking me what me, I'm like, well, now you're asking me to take care of you, so now I get to exert some control. It's
Right.
fair is fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's so awesome. So look at it as a celebration. Throw your hands up and say, yay, instead of,
yay. Yeah, it is a celebration. And oh my gosh, your kids are so amazing. Like you did it. And
right,
be proud of yourself, but also like lay some groundwork before they leave. You know it's coming. Lay
right,
some groundwork. Make sure you have rediscovered yourself. Your kids' teenage years are the perfect time for that, or even their middle school years where they're disgusted to know that they even have parents. You know, so, it's just like, yeah, start to lay some groundwork, be ready. You know it's coming. And also, don't hold them back. Don't clean up after your kids. That's not a service to them. It's not. Think about the end result of what you're doing. Yeah. Let them wash their laundry. Let them scrub their bathrooms. They need to, you know? You make them scrub their teeth, make them scrub their bathrooms. Yeah.
right,
Make them go to church.
right,
Their soul's going to last a lot longer than their teeth.
right. It's all part of
So
the preparation.
it's just you do your job and wean. You
Yeah.
weaned them once. If you nursed them, you weaned them once. It's the same thing. You're weaning them again.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you just said that. I think of it almost like, when they're young and you wean them, and then it's almost like we're the ones that are being weaned at the end. Somewhat.
Are we? There's
We're being weaned.
that moment of like,
Like they don't need me.
I'm not the end all and be all of their world. Or actually, anyone can feed them now.
Right.
That's kind of a slap in the face. Yeah.
It's so true.
Rough.
So, I mean, we just kind of, yeah.
But then again, it was so wonderful. Like I
Right.
can go out now and somebody else can put them to bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Go out and live life. Well, thank you so much. I so get you coming on here and sharing today. I feel like that's going to really like encourage so many women. And
I hope so. Life is wonderful and God gave you yourself and makes you a unique person. He creates each of us individually and we have something to give and something to do. Be creative. Do the things, the urges. I'm very creative all the time and stuff. And just do the things that God gives you to do in your soul and prepare ahead. Be ready.
Yeah.
Be ready.
Yeah. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you. I'm so happy you came on today. I was like, he told me like, whenever the Lord gives me an opportunity, I say yes. And I said, so if you ever would want to do my podcast,
my stomach went.
I'm like, it's for real. It's for real.
And then I went, yes.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
If this podcast blessed and encouraged you today, I'd love for you to share it with your friends. You can take a screenshot and share it in your stories, but make sure you tag me at Gina Granville so we can connect. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you join my Taking Back Happy Facebook group. I'll meet you back here soon, and we'll continue taking back happy together.